In the airport, my daughter-in-law yelled at me in front of the whole family, "You're in the way, you don't know how to travel, and you shouldn't even be here." My son didn't say a single word. No one knew that I, at 70 years old, had paid for the entire vacation. I canceled their tickets, and I went on the trip by myself. That time, the one who supposedly didn't know how to travel was the only one who flew. There are moments in life that break you in two, moments where the world stops and something inside you shatters with a sound so loud that only you can hear it. For me, that moment arrived at JFK International Airport on a Tuesday in February at 7 o'clock in the morning, surrounded by luggage, rushing tourists, and the stare of my own family fixed on me as if I were a stranger. My name is Eleanor Nelson. I am 70 years old, and my whole life I was the woman who offered support, the one who solved problems, the one who kept quiet to keep the peace. But that day, in front of the check-in counter, with the air conditioning chilling my skin and the noise of the baggage carts echoing in my ears, I understood something that would change me forever. Sometimes, the person who disrespects you the most is the one who owes you the most. It all started with a scream, not just any scream, a scream that cut the air like a knife. "That's enough, Eleanor! You're in the way! You don't know how to travel! You shouldn't even be here!" The voice of Brenda, my daughter-in-law, bounced off the airport walls. I felt dozens of eyes lock onto me. A little old lady with a sun hat looked at me with pity. A young man with headphones lowered his music to watch. 2 airline employees exchanged an awkward glance. And me? I stood there paralyzed, my handbag clutched to my chest like a shield. Brenda stood in front of me, her perfectly manicured, wine-colored nails pointing at me like claws, her dark hair pulled back in a ponytail so tight it seemed to yank her face backward. She wore Gucci sunglasses perched on top of her head, even though we were indoors, and that French perfume she always wore, so strong it made you dizzy, invaded the space between us. "Mother-in-law!" She spat the word as if it burned her tongue. "You ask about everything. Where is the connection? What time do we board? Where do we check the bags? It's like you've never left the house before." My heart was beating so fast I could feel the pulse in my temples. I looked at my son, Robert, searching for his eyes, waiting for something, anything, a word, a gesture. But he was staring at the floor with his hands in the pockets of his tan pants, his jaw tight, as if the pattern of the airport tiles was suddenly the most fascinating thing in the world. "Robert," I whispered. "Nothing." My 42-year-old son, the boy I carried in my arms, whose scraped knees I bandaged, whom I supported when no one else believed in him. That man would not look up. The twins, Jacob and Chloe, my 8-year-old grandchildren, were hiding behind their father. Chloe's eyes were glassy. Jacob was biting the edge of his Spider-Man backpack. They didn't understand what was happening, but they felt the tension, like when the sky turns gray before a storm. "Brenda," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, though it trembled. "I only asked if the connection in Atlanta was in the same terminal. It's a normal question." "Normal for someone who doesn't know how to navigate the modern world," she cut me off. "Look, mother-in-law, I organized this whole trip. I found the hotel, I coordinated the times, I arranged the tours. All you had to do was just be here." Those words cut deeper than the scream, because no one in that airport knew the truth. No one knew I had paid every single cent for that trip. The $1,560 for the 5 plane tickets. The $1,900 for the all-inclusive hotel in Miami. The $440 for the extra tours Brenda had suggested, which I ended up paying for because it would be nice for the kids. Almost $4,000 from my savings, money I'd set aside working 35 years as a bookkeeper in a small firm in Manhattan, money I saved cent by cent while my husband, God rest his soul, was fighting cancer, money that was my security, my peace of mind, my backup for old age, and there I was, being humiliated as if I were a burden, a nuisance, an obstacle. Brenda turned to the counter agent, ignoring me completely. "Excuse the delay. You know how older people are. Everything scares them. Everything confuses them." And the agent, a young man no older than 25 with slicked back hair, looked at me with that mix of pity and discomfort. He didn't say anything. He just nodded. I felt something break inside me. It wasn't dramatic. There was no background music or slow motion. It was silent, like when a dry branch finally gives way after holding too much weight. And in that precise instant, while the family I had held together looked at me as if I were the problem, I made a decision. "I'm going to the restroom," I announced, with a calm I didn't recognize in my own voice. No one responded. Brenda was already showing the passports. Robert was checking his phone. The kids were playing with a tablet. I walked toward the restrooms with a steady pace, even though my legs were shaking. Once inside, I locked myself in the last stall and sat down on the toilet lid. My hands were sweating. My heart was galloping in my chest. I took my cell phone out of my bag, that iPhone Robert had given me last year, saying, "So you can stay connected, Mom," and opened the airline app. There they were, 5 tickets, all under my name as the purchase holder. And then, with trembling fingers but a mind clearer than ever, I did something I never imagined I would do. But that was only the beginning. If you've ever been made to feel invisible in your own family, if you've ever paid the price of maintaining peace with your dignity, stay until the end of this story, because what happened next, no one saw coming. Before I tell you what I did in that airport restroom, you need to understand who I was, because I wasn't born invisible. I wasn't always the woman who swallowed offenses and smiled when she was hurting. There was a time when Eleanor Nelson was someone with her own voice. I was born in Philadelphia in 1955, in a simple house with a backyard where my grandmother grew mint and rosemary. I grew up with the smell of apple pie on Sundays and the rough hands of my mother working late, sewing school uniforms for half the neighborhood. I learned as a child that the women in my family didn't wait to be rescued. We rescued ourselves. At 20 years old, I moved to New York City with a cardboard suitcase and an accounting degree I earned by studying at night while working during the day at a stationery store. I got a job at a small accounting firm in Manhattan where Mr. David Williams hired me because, in his words, "You have the eyes of someone who doesn't give up easily." He was right. For 35 years, I arrived at that office before anyone else and left after everyone. I handled the accounts for restaurants, auto shops, pharmacies, fabric stores. I never stole a penny. I never submitted a late report. And when Mr. Williams had trouble with the IRS because of a mistake his son made, I was the one who spent 3 months reorganizing everything to save him from bankruptcy. He never forgot it. When he retired, he left me a bonus of $180,000 that I invested wisely along with my life savings. That allowed me to buy my 2-bedroom apartment in the Chelsea neighborhood. Small, but mine, with windows overlooking a park where kids played soccer on Saturdays. I met Richard at a wedding. He was a civil engineer with big hands and an easy laugh. He wasn't rich, but he was kind. We got married in 1982 with a simple reception in my parents' yard and a waltz to the tune of "Can't Help Falling in Love." A year later, Robert was born. My son. My only son, the boy with the hazel eyes who held my pinky finger while I sang "Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star" to put him to sleep. The shy boy who drew buildings in his notebooks and dreamed of being an architect. The young man who hugged me, crying, the day his father died. Richard got sick when Robert was 17. Pancreatic cancer, 4 years of hospitals, chemotherapy, sleepless nights. I kept working because someone had to pay the medical bills. Robert left college for 1 semester to help, but I forced him to go back. "Your father wants to see you graduate," I told him. And he did it. He got his architect degree 3 months before Richard passed away. My husband died peacefully, with our hands intertwined, after whispering to me, "You took good care of us, Eleanor. Now take care of yourself." I didn't follow his advice. After the funeral, I threw myself into Robert. Maybe too much. I paid for the master's degree he couldn't afford. I loaned him $85,000 when he wanted to partner with a friend in a design studio. He never paid me back, but it didn't matter. "You can pay me later, son," I would say, and he would nod with that crooked smile he inherited from his father. Things changed when he met Brenda. It was at an architecture exhibition in Beverly Hills. She worked in public relations for a construction materials company. Tall, thin, with that kind of polished beauty that comes from expensive salons and exclusive gyms. She was 28 years old, 8 years younger than Robert, and from the first day he brought her to eat at my house, I knew something didn't fit. She wasn't rude. On the contrary, she was charming. "Oh, mother-in-law, you cook so well," she would say while tasting my chicken pot pie. "This house has so much history. I'm sure beautiful moments happened here." She brought flowers, asked about my health, hugged Robert with so much drama it seemed like a scene from a soap opera. But I saw beyond that. I saw how her eyes scanned my apartment, calculating values. How she would ask, casually, how much it had cost, if it was already paid off, if I planned to leave it to Robert. I saw how she gradually pulled him away from me with soft but sharp phrases. "Oh, honey, your mom is getting old. Don't make her cook so much. Oh, don't you think you should set boundaries? She calls you 4 times a day." Robert changed. He started canceling our Sunday breakfasts. He stopped consulting me on important decisions. When I voiced my doubts about Brenda, he looked at me with tired eyes. "Mom, you're just jealous because there's another woman in my life now." Those words hurt me more than any slap. They got married in 2019, an expensive wedding in a garden in Palm Springs with 200 guests and a banquet costing $38,000. I contributed $12,000 because Brenda said her parents couldn't cover everything. You know, mother-in-law, with the economy. And there was always a crisis when it came to their money, but never when it came to mine. The twins were born a year later, Jacob and Chloe. 2 perfect babies who filled my heart with a joy I hadn't felt since Richard was alive. I went to the hospital every day. I brought food for Brenda and Robert. I stayed overnight when the kids wouldn't sleep. Brenda thanked me with perfect smiles. "I don't know what we'd do without you, mother-in-law." But she never left me alone with the babies for too long. She never accepted my help without later reminding me of it as if it were a debt. "Thank goodness you supported us when the kids were born. Not all mothers-in-law are so useful." Useful. That word haunted me. Over the years, the requests grew. "Mother-in-law, can you watch the kids this weekend? We have a work event." "Mother-in-law, can you lend us some money for tuition? The studio is a little tight this month." "Oh, mother-in-law, can you take the kids to the doctor? Brenda has a spa appointment she can't cancel." I always said yes, because they were my family, because I loved those children, because I thought that way I would keep my son close. My friend Mandy warned me 1,000 times. Mandy Olson, my neighbor in the building, a widow like me, with her completely white hair that she wore with pride and that direct way of speaking that didn't beat around the bush. "Eleanor, they're squeezing you like a lemon," she would tell me while we had coffee in my kitchen. "You give, and they only take. When do they give to you?" "Mandy, they're my family," I replied, stirring the sugar in my cup. "That's how it is in families. In families, you give and you receive, friend. Yours is a one-way street." I didn't listen to her, or I didn't want to listen to her, because accepting her truth meant accepting that I was alone, that my son saw me as a bank, not his mother, that my daughter-in-law tolerated me as long as I was useful. And then came February, and that dinner where Brenda set the perfect trap. But I'll tell you about that in a moment. Have you ever given everything for your family only to realize that they were using you? This story is just beginning to reveal how far abuse disguised as love can go. Don't go anywhere. It was a Friday in August when Brenda planted the seed of what would end up being my awakening. I had arrived at their apartment in the Greenwich Village neighborhood, a modern 3-bedroom rental that cost $2,800 monthly, carrying a casserole of chicken noodle soup that I had prepared that afternoon. Robert had mentioned that he had a cold, and I, as always, responded with food. The door opened, and I was greeted by the smell of a vanilla-scented candle. Brenda appeared in designer sweatpants and a perfectly ironed white shirt, even for being at home. Her loose hair fell in waves that must have cost her 2 hours at the salon. "Oh, mother-in-law, what a thoughtful gesture," she said, with that smile that no longer convinced me. Come in. We were just about to have dinner." The table was set with those modern gray plates she had bought at a store in Soho. Robert was sitting, checking his laptop, glasses on his nose, tie loosened. The twins were playing in the living room with building blocks, their high-pitched voices filling the space. "Hi, Mom." Robert barely looked up. "You didn't have to bother." Bother. That word grated on me inside, but I smiled. "It's no bother, son. It's soup. It will be good for your cold." Brenda served the soup in deep bowls while I sat in the chair they always assigned me, the one with my back to the window, the least comfortable one. We ate with light conversation. The children talked about school. Robert mentioned a new project. I listened, as always, waiting for some moment where I would feel that my presence mattered beyond the food I brought. Then, as Brenda collected the dishes, she tossed out the phrase with that rehearsed casualness that only a calculating person can achieve. "Oh, I wish we could all go to the beach. The kids have never been to Florida." Jacob immediately looked up, his eyes shining. "Florida? Like in Aunt Sarah's photos?" "Yes, my love," Brenda ruffled his hair. "With turquoise blue water, white sand, hotels with water slides." Chloe clapped excitedly. Robert smiled, but it was a tired smile. "That would be incredible, but you know how things are. The studio is just starting to pick up. Closing in January was tough." Brenda sighed dramatically, setting the plates on the kitchen counter with more noise than necessary. "I know, honey, but the kids are growing up. Jacob asked me the other day why his friends from school go to the beach and we don't. It broke my heart." I recognized the trap. I had seen it before. The sigh, the mention of the children, the guilt disguised as a family dream, all perfectly designed for someone, specifically me, to offer a solution. But this time, something in me resisted. I stayed silent, drinking my iced tea, watching the scene unfold. Robert took off his glasses and rubbed his eyes. "Brenda, it's not that I don't want to. It's that a trip like that costs, what, $15,000 for the 5 of us? We don't have it." "Closer to 18,000, more or less." Brenda sat down again, crossing her legs. "I already looked. In February, prices drop a little. An all-inclusive package with flights, a 5-star hotel in the hotel zone, tours." She paused, calculating. "But you're right. It's impossible." Silence settled over the table. Jacob and Chloe looked at us with that pure hope of children who don't yet understand what it means to be out of money. Robert drummed his fingers on the table. "And Brenda?" Brenda glanced at me sidelong, waiting. I felt the weight of their expectations like stones on my chest. I remembered all the other times. The tuition I loaned, the emergencies I ended up paying for, the refrigerator that broke down, and I helped replace it. I was always the solution to their problems. And for a moment, for the first time in years, I thought about saying no. But then Chloe spoke with that tiny voice that melted me. "Grandma Eleanor, have you been to Florida?" I turned to her. Her hazel eyes, her grandfather Richard's eyes, looked at me with genuine curiosity. "Yes, my darling. Many years ago, when your grandfather was alive." "And is it pretty?" "Beautiful. The ocean looks fake. That's how blue it is." "I'd like to see it," she said, and went back to her blocks, without pressure, without manipulation. Just a child dreaming. And there I was, caught between my instinct to protect myself and my sick need to be loved by this family that felt increasingly distant. Brenda got up to serve coffee, her voice drifting from the kitchen. "Well, maybe next year, or the year after. Someday the kids will see the beach. It's no big deal." The "it's no big deal" sounded exactly like what it was, a hook. Robert sighed and returned to his laptop. The children continued playing, and I stayed there, holding my empty cup, feeling the walls of that trap closing in around me. "I could help with something." The words came out of my mouth before I could stop them. Brenda poked her head out of the kitchen, her eyes bright. "What did you say, mother-in-law?" "I said that—" I swallowed. "That I could contribute something to the trip. Not everything, but something." Robert looked up, surprised. "Mom, no. We're not going to let you—" "Oh, but that would be a dream." Brenda returned to the table, sitting down with renewed energy. "Seriously, mother-in-law? Because look, if you help us with the plane tickets, which are about $7,800, we could cover the hotel and—" "Brenda," Robert tried to interrupt. "No, honey. Let me finish. If Grandma Eleanor covers the flights, we'll save up for the hotel. Together it would be possible. The kids could see the ocean. And mother-in-law, of course you would come. It would be a family trip. When was the last time we all went out together? Never." The answer was never, because they never included me in their plans unless they needed something. But Jacob and Chloe were now standing, jumping, shouting, "We're going to Florida," with that overflowing happiness of childhood. and Robert was looking at me with something I interpreted as gratitude, though I now know it was simple relief that someone else was solving his problems. "All right," I said, feeling my savings account evaporate in my mind. "I'll pay for the tickets." Brenda clapped, got up, and hugged me with an enthusiasm that smelled of expensive perfume and falseness. "Oh, mother-in-law, you are an angel. The kids are going to be thrilled. Right, honey?" she said to Robert. My son nodded, returning to his laptop. "Thanks, Mom. Seriously." That night, I drove back to my apartment with my hands clenched on the steering wheel. The radio was off. I only heard the engine of my 2015 Chevy and the hum of the city. When I arrived, I sat on the edge of my bed and looked at the framed photograph on the nightstand. Richard and me in Tampa, 1995, with the ocean behind us and genuine smiles. "What am I doing, Richard?" I asked the silence. But Richard was no longer there to answer me, and I was alone, making decisions that my heart knew were wrong, but that my fear of loneliness forced me to make. What I didn't know then was that the trip I had just agreed to pay for would be the one that finally taught me to say no. But to get there, I first had to hit rock bottom. Have you ever said yes when your whole being was screaming no? What comes next is the hardest part, when generosity becomes disguised abuse. Stay with me, because this story is about to take a turn you won't expect. Hell doesn't always come with fire and screaming. Sometimes it comes disguised as, "Thank you, mother-in-law, what would we do without you?" During the 3 months following that dinner, I learned that you can feel completely alone while surrounded by family. 2 days after my promise, Brenda called me. It was 8 o'clock in the morning. I had just finished my chamomile tea when the phone vibrated on the kitchen table. "Mother-in-law, good morning. Look, I've already checked the tickets. I found some on United for $1,560 each. That's $7,800 exactly. I need you to buy them today because the promotion ends." There was no, "How are you this morning?" There was no, "Are you sure you can afford it?" Just instructions. "Brenda, I can't today. I have a doctor's appointment at 10. "Oh, mother-in-law, but if we don't buy them right now, we'll lose these prices. Just send me your card details on a text message and I'll buy them. We can coordinate later for you to send me the money." Something in my stomach churned. Giving my card details to Brenda felt like giving the key to my house to a stranger. But she kept talking. "Or if you prefer, I'll send you the link and you can buy them. But it has to be today, okay? I really need your help with this, mother-in-law." She hung up before I could answer. I canceled my doctor's appointment. I went to the website. I bought the 5 tickets with my Chase card, watching those $7,800 disappear from my account with one click. Money I had saved by cutting expenses, buying at the farmer's market instead of the supermarket, wearing the same wool coat for 6 years. I sent a screenshot of the confirmation to Brenda. Her reply arrived 3 hours later. "Okay, thanks." 2 words, no exclamation points, no emojis, as if I had just paid for her coffee, not a complete vacation. The following days were a parade of requests disguised as favors. Brenda added me to a group chat called Florida Trip, where she, Robert, and I were. But I quickly realized that I was only there to receive orders, not to give an opinion. "Mother-in-law, book the all-inclusive hotel on booking.com. I'll send you the link. It's $1,900 per night, 5 nights, total $9,500. My heart sank. I had already paid $7,800. Now they wanted me to pay $9,500 more. I wrote in the chat, "I thought you would cover the hotel." Brenda replied, "Oh, mother-in-law, it turned out to be more expensive than we calculated. But look, if you cover the hotel, we'll pay for all the tours and extra meals. Deal?" Robert didn't write anything. His silence was his way of saying he agreed with Brenda. I called Mandy that night. She came to my apartment with a bottle of homemade eggnog and sat across from me on the mustard-colored sofa in my living room. "Eleanor, friend, open your eyes," she said, her wrinkled hands holding the glass. "They're bleeding you dry. You already paid for the flights. Now they want you to pay for the hotel. What's next? The air they're going to breathe?" "Mandy, they're my grandchildren. I want them to see the ocean." "Your grandchildren, yes. But Brenda, Robert, they're adults with jobs. Why do they have to go to the beach with your money?" I had no answer. Because the truth hurt too much to say out loud. I was paying because I was afraid that if I didn't, they would push me further away than I already was. I paid for the hotel, another $9,500 that came out of my investment account, the one that had grown with so much effort over the years. I had $17,300 invested. $7,800 remained. But the money was only part of the problem. The worst part was the insults. Brenda took absolute control of everything. She chose the hotel without asking me what I liked. She chose the rooms. A junior suite with an ocean view for them and the kids, and a standard room on the 3rd floor for me. "Because you'll be with us all day anyway, mother-in-law. The room is just for sleeping." When I tried to suggest a snorkeling tour I had seen, Brenda replied in the group chat, "Oh, mother-in-law, that tour is too strenuous. At your age, I don't think you can handle so much sun and swimming. Better rest at the hotel while we go." At my age, I'm 70 years old, not 90. I walk 2.5 miles 3 times a week. I climb the stairs in my building without losing my breath, but to Brenda, I was a useless old woman who needed to be taken care of. One November afternoon, I went to their house to drop off some new sweaters I had knitted for the twins. Brenda opened the door with her phone to her ear. "Yes, friend, I know. Imagine, we have to take my mother-in-law. Well, yes, it's an obligation, but whatever, she paid, so we have to invite her. Well, I have to go. She just arrived." She hung up and smiled at me, as if she hadn't just said I was a burden, an obligation. As if taking me was equivalent to carrying a heavy suitcase you didn't want, but had to bring. I didn't say anything. I just handed her the sweaters and left. In the elevator, the tears fell silently. An older woman who got on the 2nd floor looked at me with concern. "Are you all right, dear?" "Yes," I lied. "It's just the cold." December arrived and the group chat became unbearable. Brenda sent photos of bathing suits she was buying. Robert shared vacation memes. The twins sent excited voice messages. And I just read, without participating, feeling like a ghost in my own family. One day I dared to write, "What time is the flight?" to be ready on time. Brenda replied 2 hours later, "7:40 a.m. We have to be at the airport at 5:30 sharp. Don't be late, mother-in-law." The way she wrote it, as if I were the irresponsible one, as if I were the one who always caused problems. Mandy noticed the change in me. I, who was always cheerful, now walked with slumped shoulders. One afternoon in January, while we were having coffee in a diner near my house, she took my hand. "Eleanor, you're still in time to cancel. Tell them you're not going. Let them pay for their own trip." "I've already paid for everything, Mandy. I can't back out." "Yes, you can. It's your money, your decision." But I didn't listen to her, because a part of me still believed that once we were in Florida, things would be different, that Brenda would relax, that Robert would see me, truly see me, that the kids and I would build sandcastles, and it would all be worth it. How wrong I was. The night before the trip, I packed my suitcase. I put in my black swimsuit that I wore in San Diego 2 years ago, my straw hat, sunscreen, the Stephen King book I never finished, and a small photograph of Richard, because I needed to take him with me somehow. I sat on the edge of my bed, looking at the closed suitcase, and felt an emptiness in my chest that I couldn't explain, as if I knew something bad was going to happen, as if my body was warning me to turn back. But I didn't listen to that voice. At 4 o'clock in the morning, my alarm went off. I showered, dressed in my tan linen pants and my coral long-sleeve shirt. I put my hair up in a low bun. I looked in the mirror. 7 days is all, I told myself. 7 days you can handle. I called an Uber. The driver, a man about 50 with a thick mustache, helped me with my suitcase. "Going on vacation, ma'am?" "Yes, with my family." "That's wonderful. Enjoy it a lot." I didn't know how to answer, because deep down I knew I wasn't going to enjoy anything. I was going to survive. I was going to smile when it hurt. I was going to swallow insults disguised as jokes. I was going to be invisible while paying for everything. But what I didn't know, what I never could have imagined, is that this trip was not going to break me. It was going to wake me up. Have you ever paid for love? Have you bought your place in your own family? What is about to come is the moment where everything explodes. And believe me, you won't want to miss what I did next. I arrived at the airport at 5:15 in the morning. The sky was still dark, barely stained gray on the horizon. The cold February air cut my face as I dragged my suitcase through the parking lot. My hands were shaking, not from the cold, but from my usual nervousness. Being late, forgetting something, being in the way. I entered Terminal 2 and searched for my family. Nothing. Just sleepy travelers dragging suitcases, airline employees in their immaculate uniforms, the smell of fresh coffee mixed with the chemical scent of freshly mopped floors. I took out my phone. It was 5:18 a.m. I wrote to the group chat. "I'm here now. Where are you?" The 2 blue check marks appeared immediately, seen, but no one answered. I waited 15 minutes standing, my suitcase beside me, feeling ridiculous. People passed by me with purpose, with clear destinations, with families waiting for them. I was alone, waiting for a family I had paid for entirely, but who couldn't even bother to answer me. At 5:47 a.m., I saw them arrive. Brenda came first, clacking in brown leather boots, tight jeans, a white linen shirt, and those darn Gucci sunglasses on her head, even though we were indoors. She was dragging a huge pink suitcase that surely weighed more than the 50 pounds allowed. Her face was tense, with that expression of annoyance that I knew well. Behind her came Robert, with the twins, each pulling their own little wheeled suitcase. Jacob wore an Avengers baseball cap. Chloe carried a unicorn plush toy almost her size. My son had a backpack over his shoulder and the look of someone who hadn't slept well. "Good morning," I said, approaching with a smile that hurt to hold. "Hi, Mom." Robert gave me a quick kiss on the cheek, one of those automatic, emotionless ones. Brenda walked past me, straight toward the flight screens. Let's see. I need to see which counter we check in at." "It's counter 12, I said, because I had already checked the app 3 times. Brenda looked at me with those hazel eyes that once seemed beautiful to me, but that now I only saw as calculating. "How do you know?" "I saw it on the app. The flight leaves from gate." "Enough, mother-in-law. We'll look at that later. Right now, I need to find where to check in." I swallowed my reply. Grandma Eleanor, the one who knows nothing, the one who is in the way with information. We walked toward the check-in area. Brenda was in the lead, giving orders. "Jacob, don't wander off. Chloe, put that stuffed animal away." "Robert, did you bring the passports?" My son checked his backpack with the clumsy movements of someone who is sleepy and stressed. We arrived at the counter. The line was long but moving fast. I stayed a little behind, giving them space, watching how Brenda organized the documents, how Robert lifted Chloe so she could see the screen, how the twins were laughing about something. A family. I was watching them from the outside, as if looking at a photograph where I didn't belong. When it was our turn, Brenda handed over the 5 passports. The agent, that young man with the slicked-back hair, began to review them. "Checking baggage?" "Yes, 3 suitcases," Brenda replied. While they were weighing the suitcases, I took out my phone to check something about the hotel. I don't know exactly what I saw, some detail about the check-in time. And without thinking, in a normal voice, I asked, "Brenda, is the connection in Atlanta in the same terminal, or do we have to change?" It was a simple, legitimate question, the kind of thing anyone asks before a trip with layovers. But Brenda turned around as if I had yelled an insult at her. "What?" "I was just asking if—" "Oh, mother-in-law, seriously?" Again with the questions. Her voice rose in volume. Some people in the line next to us turned to look. "Brenda, it's just a question." "No, it is not just a question." She dropped her Louis Vuitton bag onto the counter with a dry thud. "You haven't stopped since you got here. Where's the counter? What time do we board? Where do we leave the bags? Is the connection in the same terminal? It's like you've never traveled in your life." My heart started pounding in my ears. I felt the blood rush to my face. "Brenda, calm down." "I'm not going to calm down." Now she was shouting, and not only our line was watching, but people from other counters. "I'm sick of it. The whole way here I was thinking that we were going to have to put up with your questions, your insecurity, your... She searched for the word like someone looking for a knife to stab. "That's enough, Eleanor. You're in the way. You don't know how to travel. You shouldn't even be here." The silence that followed was so thick I could feel it on my skin. "You're in the way. You shouldn't be here." The words bounced off the airport walls, in my head, in my heart. I looked around. The older woman with the sun hat was watching me with pity, her mouth slightly open. A businessman with a briefcase had stopped on his way to look. The counter agents exchanged an awkward glance. A young man with headphones took them off to better hear the drama. And I, Eleanor Nelson, who had paid every cent for that trip, was being publicly humiliated as if I were a silly child who didn't know how to behave. I looked for my son's eyes. I needed him to say something, anything, to defend me, to tell his wife that she was out of line, to remember that I was his mother, not an annoying stranger. Robert had his jaw tight, his eyes fixed on the floor, his hands in the pockets of his tan pants, and he said nothing, absolutely nothing. Lee. "Robert!" My voice came out broken, barely a whisper. He looked up for half a second, but couldn't hold my gaze. He looked down again, as if the gray tiles held fascinating secrets written on them. The twins were scared. Jacob was biting his lip. Chloe clutched her unicorn to her chest, her eyes glossy. They felt the tension but didn't understand what was happening. They just knew that their grandmother was in trouble, and their mother was angry. Brenda continued, her voice now more controlled, but just as venomous. "Mother-in-law, you ask about everything. Where is the connection? What time do we board? Where do we check the bags? It's like you've never left the house. It's exhausting." The counter agent looked at us, not knowing what to do, the passport still in his hand. I felt something shatter inside me. It wasn't dramatic. It didn't make a sound, but I felt it as clearly as if a bone had snapped. It was my patience, my tolerance, my sick need to be accepted by this family that treated me like trash. And in that shattering, in that space where something died, something new was born. Clarity. I looked at Brenda. I really looked at her. I saw her perfectly painted pale pink mouth, her impeccable nails, her expensive clothes, her attitude of superiority. And I understood something I should have understood months, perhaps years ago. She was never going to respect me. It didn't matter how much I paid. It didn't matter how much I humiliated myself. To her, I was just a walking ATM, useful when money was needed, invisible when it wasn't. I looked at Robert, my son, the baby I breastfed, the boy whose scrapes I bandaged, the teenager who cried in my arms when his father died. That man couldn't look me in the eyes because he knew. He knew that what was happening was wrong, but it was more comfortable to look away. And at that moment, with the airport bustle around, with the eyes of strangers fixed on me, with my family treating me like a paid-for burden, I made the most difficult and most liberating decision of my life. "I'm going to the restroom," I said, with a calm I didn't know I had. Brenda snorted. "Well, hurry up. We have to check in." I grabbed my bag, turned around, and walked toward the restrooms. My legs were shaking, but my steps were firm. I passed by the woman with the hat, who looked at me with compassion. I passed by the businessman, who shook his head. I passed by the young man with the headphones, who watched me with curiosity. I entered the women's restroom. It was clean, with white walls and large mirrors. It smelled of pine disinfectant. I went into the last stall, locked the door, and sat on the toilet lid. My hands were sweating, my heart was galloping in my chest like a runaway horse. I took a deep breath once, twice, 3 times. I took my phone out of my bag with trembling fingers. And then I did something I never, ever imagined I would do. What happened in that restroom changed everything. The woman who walked in was not the same one who walked out. If you've ever wanted to get revenge on someone who humiliated you, if you've ever dreamed of seeking justice for yourself, what comes next will take your breath away. Sitting in that bathroom stall, with the muffled airport noise filtering through the door, I held my phone with hands I couldn't control. They trembled so much that I had to rest my elbows on my knees to steady it. The screen lit up. There was my wallpaper, a photo of the twins on their 7th birthday, smiling with cake on their cheeks. Jacob and Chloe, my grandchildren. I loved them with an intensity that hurt. But loving does not mean letting yourself be destroyed. I opened the United app. My user information was already saved. I went to my trips. There were the 5 tickets. Eleanor Nelson, Robert Nelson, Brenda Nelson, Jacob Nelson, Chloe Nelson. Flight 681 to Atlanta. Connection to Miami. All under my name as the purchase holder. All paid for with my money. My finger hovered over the screen. Was I really going to do this? Was I really going to cancel a trip I had paid $7,800 for? Was I really going to disappoint my grandchildren? Then I remembered Brenda's voice. You're in the way. You don't know how to travel. You shouldn't even be here. I remembered Robert's cowardly silence. I remembered the 3 months of insults disguised as organizing. I remembered every dollar I had given without being thanked. And I remembered something Richard told me a week before he died, when I was crying because Robert had forgotten my birthday. Eleanor, my love, teaching people how to treat you isn't being mean, it's loving yourself. My fingers stopped shaking. I tapped the Manage Reservation button. The option to cancel flight appeared. A warning message popped up on the screen. Upon cancellation, the refund will be processed as credit in your account according to the airline's policies. I read the terms. Non-refundable fare. But I could get the value as credit minus a $500 penalty. $7,300 in credit that would remain in my name. My heart was beating so fast I felt it in my throat. I selected the 4 tickets. Robert, Brenda, Jacob, Chloe. I left mine active. Are you sure you want to cancel these flights? I wasn't. I wasn't sure of anything. I only knew that if I got on that plane, if I spent 7 days swallowing humiliation, if I continued to let them treat me like a burden after paying for everything, then I would be betraying myself in a way I could never forgive. I tapped Confirm Cancellation. The screen loaded for 3 seconds that felt like 3 years. Then it appeared. Cancellation successful. You will receive a confirmation email. I had done it. I had really done it. But I couldn't stop there. If I was going to do this, I had to do it right. I had to go all the way. I dialed Mandy's number. She answered on the second ring, her voice hoarse with sleep. Eleanor? What happened? It's 6 a.m. Mandy, my voice cracked. I'm at the airport. I need you to come, please. Are you okay? What happened? I told her everything. The words came out rushed, mixed with tears that I finally allowed to fall. Brenda's scream, Robert's silence, the canceled tickets, everything. There was silence on the other end. Then, Mandy's voice, firm as a rock. I'm on my way. Give me 40 minutes. Eleanor, I'm proud of you. We hung up. I took a deep breath. I wasn't done yet. I opened the Booking.com app. I searched for the hotel reservation. Paradisus Resort Miami. 5 nights, 3 rooms, $9,500. Cancellation policy. Full refund if canceled 48 hours in advance. I looked at the check-in date. It was in 3 days. It was within the cancellation period. I tapped Cancel Reservation. Reason for cancellation. I selected Change of Plans. Your reservation has been canceled. The refund will be processed in 5 to 7 business days to your credit card. $9,500 that would come back to me. Now came the part that both terrified and thrilled me. I searched for flights, but not to Miami. To San Francisco. Departure. Today. Return. In 7 days. I found one on American Airlines. Departure at 11:40 a.m. 2 tickets. One for me, one for Mandy. Seats together. Total price. $2,480. I bought them without thinking twice. Then I looked for a hotel in San Francisco. Something nice. Something I deserved. I found a boutique hotel facing the bay in the Fisherman's Wharf area. The Bayside Inn. Bayview room, breakfast included. 7 nights, $4,200 for 2 people. I booked it. Finally, I looked for a whale-watching tour. The one I always wanted to do, but Richard couldn't because of his illness. $320 per person. I bought it. I did the math mentally. I had paid $7,800 for flights. I would recover $7,300 as credit. I had paid $9,500 for the hotel, which would be refunded. Now I was spending $7,000 on my own trip. In the end, I would recover money instead of losing it. And most importantly, I would recover my dignity. I stayed sitting in that restroom for 20 more minutes, waiting for the trembling to pass, for my breathing to normalize, for my determination to solidify like concrete. A woman came into the restroom and went into the stall next to mine. I heard the sound of her bag hanging up, the sound of the toilet paper, the normal life of someone who was not about to blow up their own family. When she came out and washed her hands, I looked at myself in the mirror through the crack in the door. My eyes were red but dry. My jaw was tense. I looked like another person. Maybe I was. I stepped out of the stall. I washed my hands with cold water. I splashed the back of my neck. I looked at myself in the big mirror over the sinks. There was Eleanor Nelson, 70 years old, gray hair pulled back in a bun, wrinkles around my eyes that told stories of smiles and tears, a coral shirt I had chosen that morning thinking about looking nice for family photos. But the woman in the mirror was no longer the one who walked into the airport. That woman had made a decision. She had said enough. She had chosen to love herself over being loved by people who didn't know how to love her. "You can do this," I said softly to my reflection. "You already took the hardest step. Now you just have to walk." I grabbed my bag, took a deep breath, and left the restroom. The airport was just as chaotic. Families running, suitcases rolling, flight announcements. But I saw it differently. I saw it with the eyes of someone who had just regained her power. I walked back toward the check-in area. In the distance, I saw my family. Brenda was talking to the agent, gesticulating with her hands. Robert was holding Chloe. Jacob was playing with his Nintendo Switch. As I got closer, Brenda saw me. She rolled her eyes. That gesture I was so tired of. "Finally, mother-in-law, we were about to send someone to look for you. Now I need your passport to check in." I stopped 6 feet away. I held my bag against my chest. "I'm not checking in," I said firmly. Brenda blinked, confused. "What do you mean, no? Obviously you have to check your suitcase." "You didn't understand me, Brenda. I'm not checking in because I'm not traveling." "Because none of you are traveling." Robert's face changed. Confusion gave way to alarm. "Mom, what are you talking about?" The counter agent looked at us uncomfortably, clearly wishing he were anywhere else. "I'm talking about the fact that I canceled the tickets," I said, every word coming out clear and precise. "The 4 tickets, yours, Brenda's, Jacob's, and Chloe's." Absolute silence. Brenda was the first to react. Her face went from confusion to disbelief and then to fury. "You did what?" The bomb had just exploded. Brenda's face transformed into something I had never seen. Her perfectly made-up cheeks turned red, the veins in her neck stood out, and her eyes, those calculating hazel eyes, now burned with a pure rage she couldn't control. "What did you do, you crazy old woman?" she screamed, and her voice echoed throughout the check-in area. People in the neighboring lines stopped what they were doing. A group of students with backpacks turned to look at us. A whole family froze. The counter agent took a step back, instinctively moving away from the conflict. "I canceled the tickets," I repeated, my calm voice contrasting with her hysteria. "The 5 tickets were in my name. I bought them. I decided to cancel them." Robert set Chloe down and took a step toward me, his face pale. "Mom, what are you saying? It has to be a mistake. You couldn't have." "It's not a mistake, son. I did it 15 minutes ago, from the restroom." Brenda put her hands to her head, pulling at her hair. "It can't be. This is not happening." She turned to the agent. "Sir, please check. It has to be a system error. Our tickets have to be active." The agent, clearly uncomfortable, typed on his computer. His fingers moved quickly over the keyboard. He frowned. He typed more. Then he looked up with an apologetic expression. "I'm sorry, ma'am. The tickets in the names of Robert Nelson, Brenda Nelson, Jacob Nelson, and Chloe Nelson appear as canceled 18 minutes ago. Only Eleanor Nelson's ticket is active." Brenda stumbled as if she had been slapped. Robert stood motionless, his eyes fixed on me, as if he were looking at a stranger. But... Brenda searched for words, her brain clearly struggling to process what was happening. "You can't do that. We were going to be on that flight. The children—" She pointed to Jacob and Chloe, who were looking at us scared, not understanding anything. "I could do it," I said, and every word came out with a calm I didn't recognize myself. Because I bought the tickets. They are in my name. They are my property until they are used, and I decided not to use them. This is illegal. Brenda reached for her bag, pulling out her phone. I'm going to call the police. You can't kidnap our tickets. It's not illegal, the agent intervened, clearly wanting to end this. If she is the purchase holder, she has the right to cancel. It's airline policy. Brenda glared at him before turning back to me. Why? Why would you do this? And there it was, the question I had been waiting for, the opportunity to say everything I had kept silent for months, maybe years. Why? I repeated, and something in my voice made Brenda take a step back. Are you really asking me why, Brenda? Yes, we're about to go on vacation. The kids were excited. The vacation that I paid for, my voice rose slightly. The $7,800 for the tickets that came out of my account. The $9,500 for the hotel that also came out of my card. The tours, the meals, everything. I paid for all of it. Robert opened his mouth to speak, but I cut him off. And 20 minutes ago, Brenda, you yelled at me in front of all these people that I'm in the way, that I don't know how to travel, that I shouldn't even be here. My voice cracked slightly, but I continued. You publicly humiliated me, and you— I turned to Robert. You didn't say anything. You just stood there staring at the floor as if I were the problem and not your wife yelling at your mother. Robert's eyes were glassy. Mom, No. I raised my hand. I don't want any more excuses. I don't want any more explanations. For 3 months, I organized this trip, paying every penny while you two decided everything without consulting me. You put me in the cheapest room. You excluded me from the decisions. You treated me as if I were a burden you had to tolerate. And this morning, after paying for everything, your wife yelled at me as if I were garbage. Tears finally fell, but not from weakness, from liberation. So I decided that if I'm in the way, if I don't know how to travel, if I shouldn't be here, then you won't go either. Brenda let out a cry of frustration. But the children! Aren't you thinking about the children? They were looking forward to this trip. What am I going to tell them? I looked at Jacob and Chloe. Their confused little faces broke my heart. Jacob was biting his lip, trying not to cry. Chloe hugged her unicorn tightly. I knelt down to their level. Brenda tried to intervene, but Robert stopped her with his arm. My darlings, I said softly, I know this is confusing, and you are sad, and I am truly sorry. But sometimes adults do things that are not right, and someone has to put a stop to it. Your mother disrespected me today, and I can't allow that, not even for you, whom I love with all my heart. Chloe asked in a small voice, Are we not going to the beach anymore, Grandma? Not on this trip, my darling, but someday when you're older, you'll understand why Grandma had to do this. I stood up. I pulled a manila envelope from my bag that I had prepared while in the restroom. I had printed it out at one of the airport service machines, paying $1 per page. I handed the envelope to Robert. He opened it with trembling hands. Inside were all the screenshots, the purchase of the tickets, the hotel reservation, the charges to my card, the payment confirmations, everything, every transaction, every dollar I had spent. So you don't forget, I said, who paid for this vacation you were all so looking forward to. Robert looked at the papers, turning the pages one by one, and with each page, his face grew paler. Brenda snatched the envelope and began to look through it. Her expression changed from fury to something more complex, shame mixed with desperation. Mother-in-law, all right, I went too far, I admit it. Her voice changed, becoming almost pleading. I was stressed. I didn't sleep well. I shouldn't have yelled at you like that. I apologize. Okay? But now buy other tickets, reactivate these, whatever it takes, but you can't cancel the trip like this. We had everything planned. Apologies? The word left my mouth with a bitter taste. Brenda, apologies don't work when you've been disrespecting me for months, when you use me as a bank, when you make me feel invisible in my own family. An apology doesn't erase all that. I won't reactivate anything or buy new tickets because I am going to travel, Brenda. I'm just not traveling with you. The silence that followed was thick, heavy. Robert found his voice, hoarse. What do you mean you're going to travel? I pulled out my phone. I showed them the screen. My American Airlines ticket to San Francisco, departure 11:40 a.m. I'm going to San Francisco in 5 hours with Mandy. 7 days in a hotel overlooking the bay. I'm going whale watching, something I've always wanted to do. I'm going to eat fresh seafood. I'm going to walk along the boardwalk. I'm going to rest without anyone making me feel like I'm in the way. Brenda let out a hysterical laugh. San Francisco? With Mandy? That gossipy neighbor? With my friend, I corrected her firmly. With someone who respects me, who values me, who doesn't yell at me in public. I handed Robert another piece of paper. It was the hotel cancellation confirmation in Miami. I canceled the hotel too. I'm going to receive a full refund, $9,500 that will return to my account, money that was mine and that I spent thinking I was going to have a pleasant vacation with my family. But not anymore. I will no longer pay to be mistreated. Robert dropped the papers. He covered his face with his hands. His shoulders were shaking. Mom, forgive me. You're right. Everything you say is true. I was a coward. I should have defended you. I should have. Yes, I interrupted him. You should have, but you didn't. And that's something you're going to have to live with, son. Brenda stood still, tears running down her perfectly made-up cheeks, ruining her black eyeliner. But they weren't tears of remorse. They were tears of rage, of frustration, of someone who had just lost control. This is crazy, she muttered. A damn madness. What am I going to tell my parents? My friends? I already told them we were going to Florida. And there it was, her real concern. Not the harm she had caused me, not the lesson her children had just witnessed, but her image, her pride, her appearance in front of others. Tell them the truth, I said simply. Tell them you yelled at your mother-in-law after she paid for the whole trip, and that she decided that enough was enough. I turned to leave, but Robert grabbed my arm. Mom, wait, please. We can fix this. I can pay you. Let me pay you for the tickets and... I don't want your money, Robert, I said softly, freeing my arm. I never wanted your money. I wanted your respect, your love, your defense when I needed it most. And that can't be bought. Please, son, I love you. I will always love you. But I need you to understand something. I am your mother, not your slave or your bank. And if you can't see me as a human being who deserves dignity, then we need distance. The twins were now crying openly. Brenda hugged them, hiding her own face in Chloe's hair. Robert was pale, shaking, with silent tears running down his cheeks. And I felt light, as if I had dropped a 200-pound weight that I had been carrying for years. Have a nice day, I said, grabbing the handle of my suitcase, and I walked away. I walked toward the terminal exit, toward where Mandy should already be waiting for me, toward my new life, toward San Francisco, toward myself. Behind me I heard Brenda sobbing. I heard Robert call my name one more time. I heard the children crying, and I kept walking. Because sometimes loving yourself means disappointing others, and that's okay. The one who supposedly didn't know how to travel had just taken control of her life. But this story is not over yet. What happened in San Francisco and what happened afterward will make you believe in dignified endings. Don't go anywhere. Mandy was waiting for me in the arrivals area, her white hair in a braid, wearing jeans and a turquoise shirt that made her eyes sparkle. When she saw me, she opened her arms, and I ran to her like a child seeking refuge. It's done, friend, she whispered in my ear as she hugged me. The hardest part is over. We cried there, in the middle of the airport, not caring who looked at us. But these tears were different. They were not tears of pain, but of liberation, like when an infected wound finally drains and you can begin to heal. Did you really do everything you told me on the phone? Mandy asked, holding my face in her hands. Everything, I replied, wiping my eyes. I canceled their tickets, I canceled the hotel, and I bought ours. We're going to San Francisco in 5 hours. Mandy laughed, a deep belly laugh. Oh, Eleanor Nelson, who are you, and what did you do with my friend who always said yes to everything? That woman died an hour ago, I said, and I felt it was true. I am someone else. We went to have breakfast at a restaurant inside the airport. We ordered pancakes with fried eggs, bacon, black coffee, and a cinnamon roll. I ate like I hadn't eaten in months, savoring every bite, feeling my body regain strength. Mandy told me she had packed in 20 minutes. I grabbed the first things I found: swimsuits, sunscreen, and my good mood. What else do I need? While we were eating, my phone started ringing. It was Robert. I declined the call. It rang again. I declined again. Then the messages arrived. "Mom, please, answer. We need to talk. Brenda is devastated. The kids won't stop crying. How could you do this to us?" That last message hurt me. How could you do this to us? As if I were the villain, as if I had been the one who yelled, who humiliated, who disrespected. I showed the messages to Mandy. She shook her head. "He can't even accept his responsibility. He still blames you." "I know," I said. I put the phone in my bag. "And that's why I need this trip. I need space to think, to heal, to remember who I am without them." We boarded the flight at 11:40. Mandy requested the window seat. I sat in the aisle. When the plane took off and New York City became small beneath us, I felt something I hadn't felt in years: hope. We arrived in San Francisco at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. The heat hit us as soon as we left the airport, but it was a gentle, humid heat that smelled of the ocean and gardenias. The sky was an impossible blue without a single cloud. We took a taxi to the hotel. The driver, a man about 60 with a straw hat, told us about the best places to eat. "If you want fresh seafood, go to the Anchor. If you want tacos, the Mission Spot. And if you want to dance, the Marina is full of life every night." The Bayside Inn was small but perfect. Colonial-style construction with terracotta-colored walls, mosaic tiles, and a central courtyard with a fountain where birds sang. Our room was on the second floor, with a balcony that overlooked the bay. When I opened the balcony doors, the sound of the waves filled my ears. The water was 1,000 shades of blue and green. The golden sand stretched for miles on either side. Some people walked along the shore, others did yoga facing the bay. "It's beautiful," I sighed. "You deserve it," Mandy said, hugging me by the shoulders. "Every penny, every moment of peace, every smile you'll have here, you deserve it all." That afternoon, we didn't do anything extraordinary. We put on swimsuits. I wore a black one-piece that made me feel secure, and went down to the beach. The water was warm, perfect. We waded in up to our knees and let the waves hit our legs while the sun kissed our skin. "What are you thinking about?" Mandy asked. "I'm thinking that 5 years ago, when Richard died, I thought my life was over, that the best part had already passed. And today, standing here, I realize that my life is just starting again." We had dinner at the hotel restaurant, grilled salmon with homemade tortillas, coleslaw, and lemonade. The waitress, a young woman with a huge smile, treated us like queens. While we ate, my phone vibrated. More messages from Robert. This time I didn't read them. I simply put the phone on airplane mode. "Well done," Mandy approved. "These 7 days are yours. No one has the right to steal them with their drama." The following days were the happiest I had had in years. On the second day, we went to downtown San Francisco. We walked along the boardwalk, seeing artisans, street musicians, and couples holding hands. We bought local art to decorate my apartment. We ate ice cream sitting on a bench facing the bay. On the third day, we took the whale watching tour. It was magical. I put on the life jacket, the fins, and the mask, and got into the crystal clear water. Under the surface was a world I had never seen. Fish of all colors, coral, starfish. Mandy swam beside me, pointing out the wonders. When I got out of the water, I felt like a child. "Mandy, I saw a huge yellow fish and a blue one with stripes." The tour guide, a tanned young man named Stephen, laughed at my enthusiasm. "That's the spirit, ma'am. It's never too late for new adventures." On the fourth day, while we were having breakfast at the hotel, I met Mr. Howard. He was an older man, perhaps 72, with silver hair perfectly combed back, deep wrinkles around his brown eyes, and large working hands. He was sitting alone at the table next to us, reading the newspaper and drinking coffee. Our eyes met by accident. He smiled, a genuine smile that reached his eyes. "Good morning," he said in a grave but kind voice. "Good morning," I replied. "Are you enjoying San Francisco?" Very much, Mandy chimed in. It's our 4th day, and each day is better than the last. That's great. I've been coming here every year since my wife passed away. It's been 3 years now. She loved this place. There was something in his tone, in the way he mentioned his wife, that touched my heart. It was the voice of someone who had loved deeply and lost, but was still honoring that love by living. I'm very sorry, I said sincerely. Thank you, but I'm learning to be okay alone, or well, accompanied by her memories. We talked through breakfast. Mr. Howard was a retired engineer from Seattle. He had 2 married daughters, 5 grandchildren. He told us about his wife, Grace, who had been an elementary school teacher and loved to dance swing. Every time I hear swing, he said, looking at the bay, I see her right there, moving as if there were no tomorrow. She was a terrible dancer. She stepped on my feet terribly, he laughed, but she was happy. I told him about Richard, about the cancer, about how sometimes I still expected to find him in the kitchen making coffee. Mr. Howard nodded, understanding without the need for words. It wasn't romance. It was something more valuable, recognition. 2 people who had loved and lost, who had survived and were learning to live again. The following days, Mr. Howard joined our adventures. We went on a boat tour around the bay together. We had seafood dinner at a restaurant he knew where the clam chowder was the best in the city. One night on the boardwalk, a band was playing swing, and he invited Mandy to dance. I watched them from the bench, laughing as Mandy stepped on his feet exactly as Grace had. "Don't you dance?" he asked me afterward, offering me his hand. "Not for years," I admitted. "The years don't matter. The music does." We danced, clumsy, disorderly, laughing when we messed up. And for the first time in a long time, I felt alive. Not as a mother, not as a grandmother, not as the woman who always gave, just as Eleanor, a 70-year-old woman with a whole life ahead of her. During those 7 days in San Francisco, I posted photos on Instagram. I, who hardly ever use social media, wanted to leave a record. I wanted it to be documented that Eleanor Nelson had traveled, had smiled, had lived. Photos on the beach with my straw hat, photos with Mandy toasting with margaritas, photos of the sunset from the balcony, photos of the whale watching tour with my thumb up. Every photo was a testament. I do know how to travel, and I do it perfectly well alone. I didn't open Robert's messages until the 6th day. There were 47 unread messages. I read them all at once, sitting on the balcony as the sun set. The first ones were angry. "This is immature. I can't believe you did this to us. The kids ask about you, and I don't know what to tell them." Then came the negotiating ones. "What do you want us to do?" "Brenda is willing to formally apologize. We can have dinner when you get back, clear everything up. After that, the guilt trips. Mom, the kids are crying for you. Chloe says Grandma doesn't love them anymore. Is this how you're going to solve things, by running away?" And finally, in message 43, something different. "Mom, I talked to a therapist. He suggested I seek help. Brenda and I have a lot of problems, not just with you, between us. I think you were right about everything. And I'm sorry. I really am sorry. I don't expect you to forgive me anytime soon. I just want you to know that I saw your Instagram. You look happy. You look free. And it hurts me to know that I was the one keeping you prisoner. I love you, Mom. I'll always love you. And I'm going to work on being the son you deserve, even if it takes years." I read that message 3 times. I cried. But I didn't call. Not yet. Because forgiving doesn't mean forgetting, and healing takes time. On the last day in San Francisco, Mr. Howard invited us to breakfast. He gave us his phone number. "If you ever come to Seattle, you have a place to stay," he said. "Or if I come to New York City, I hope you'll welcome me with a coffee." "Of course," I said, carefully saving his number. It wasn't a romance, but it was a door. The possibility that life still had surprises in store, that not everything was written in stone, that at 70 years old I could still make new friends, have new adventures, be a new version of myself. When the plane took off back to New York City, I looked out the window. San Francisco grew small beneath us. Mandy was asleep in the seat next to me, snoring softly. I didn't sleep. I stayed awake, thinking about everything that had happened, about the scream at the airport, about the decision in the restroom, about the 7 days of freedom, about Robert's message. And I understood something fundamental. Self-love is not selfishness. Setting boundaries is not cruelty. And sometimes, stepping away is the most loving way to teach someone how to treat you. I had flown. The one who supposedly didn't know how to travel had flown further than anyone imagined, and I was just beginning. But the story doesn't end here. What happened when I returned home, the final confrontation with Robert, and how this broken family began to heal, that comes now, and I promise you, it will be worth every second. The apartment smelled stale when I opened the door. 7 days without anyone opening the windows, without the sun coming in, without life. I left my suitcase in the entrance and walked straight to the living room, opening every window wide. The fresh March air came in like a sigh of relief. Mandy helped me unpack before going to her own apartment. She hugged me tightly at the door. "Eleanor, I'm proud of you, of the woman you were at that airport and the woman who is coming back now. Don't let anyone make you forget your worth." When she left, I made myself a chamomile tea and sat on the mustard-colored sofa that I loved so much. My phone, which I had kept on airplane mode during the flight, vibrated wildly when I turned it on. Text message notifications, missed calls, text messages. Most were from Robert, but there was a new one, from a number I didn't have saved. "Mrs. Eleanor, this is Jacob. I'm writing from my cousin Tony's phone because Mom won't let me use mine. Grandma, why don't you love us anymore? Chloe cries every night. I'm sad too. Did we do something wrong? Please, answer." My heart broke. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. The children. The children always paid the price for the adults' mistakes. Before I could reply, there was a knock at my door. It was 7 o'clock in the evening. I wasn't expecting anyone. I looked through the peephole, and my heart leaped. Robert. He was alone, without Brenda, without the children. He wore the same gray jacket I had given him 2 Christmases ago. He had deep bags under his eyes, as if he hadn't slept in days. His normally well-combed hair was messy, with gray strands I didn't remember seeing before. I opened the door but stayed in the doorway, without inviting him in. "Mom." His voice came out broken. "Thank you for opening up." "What are you doing here, Robert?" "I need to talk to you, please. 5 minutes." I hesitated. Part of me wanted to close the door. But the other part, the one that was still a mother, the one who had carried this man when he was a baby, couldn't do it. I stepped aside. He walked in, looking at the apartment as if seeing it for the first time in years. He stood in the middle of the living room, hands in his pockets, not knowing where to start. "Sit down," I said, pointing to the sofa. We sat facing each other. The silence was so thick you could cut it with a knife. "I saw your photos on Instagram," he began. "You looked happy, truly happy, and I realized I hadn't seen you like that in a long time." I didn't answer. I just waited. "Mom, I messed everything up. Completely. I let Brenda treat you badly. I let her use you. And the worst part is, I used you too. I saw you as a solution to our problems. We need money? Call Mom. We need a babysitter? Call Mom. We need a vacation? Mom pays for it." His voice cracked. He wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. "I never wondered how you felt. I never thought about what it meant for you to give so much and receive so little. I was a bad son, the worst." "Yes," I said simply, "you were." He looked up, surprised by my direct honesty. "Robert, for 3 months, I felt invisible while you organized a trip that I was paying for. You put me in the cheapest room. You excluded me from the decisions. And when I tried to participate, your wife yelled at me in front of all those people at the airport that I'm in the way, that I don't know how to travel, that I shouldn't even be there." "I know. And you," my voice rose. "You stayed silent, staring at the floor, as if I were the problem. Your mother, who gave you life, who worked to give you an education, who supported you when your father died, who always, always was there. That mother was yelled at in public, and you didn't say a word in her defense." Tears were falling freely down his face now. "You're right. You were right about everything. And I have no excuse. I can only tell you that Brenda is very strong. She always has been. And at some point, I stopped being myself and became what she needed me to be. I stopped thinking. I stopped defending what was right. I became a coward. That doesn't justify it. I know. I'm not asking you to forgive me. I just came to tell you that you're right about everything, and that I'm going to change. I've already started. Brenda and I are going to couples therapy. I also have individual therapy. The therapist made me see things that I'm deeply ashamed of. He leaned forward, his hands clasped between his knees. Mom, Brenda had to borrow money from her parents to cancel the reservations we had. Her dad said some very harsh things to her about how she treats people, about her attitude, and she's changing too. Or at least she's trying. I'm glad for her, I said, and I meant it, truly. But that doesn't change what happened. It doesn't erase the pain. I know. That's why I'm not asking for forgiveness yet, because I know I don't deserve it. I'm just asking for time to show you that I can be better, that I can be the son you deserve. There was a long silence. Outside you could hear the sounds of the city, cars passing, children playing in the park, life continuing as always. The kids miss you, he said finally. Jacob texted you, didn't he? Yes. It wasn't Brenda's idea or mine. He did it on his own. He took his cousin's phone without anyone realizing. When we found out, Brenda wanted me to delete the message, but I told her no, that if Jacob needed to write to you, it was his right. That surprised me, a small sign that maybe, just maybe, Robert was starting to set boundaries. Do they know the truth? I asked. Do they know what happened? Yes. We sat down with them and explained that Mom yelled at Grandma, that Grandma felt very sad and decided not to go on the trip with us, that sometimes adults make mistakes and we have to face the consequences. And Brenda agreed with that version? Robert rubbed his face with both hands. No. She wanted to tell them that you canceled the trip out of spite, but I told her no. I told her that if we couldn't be honest with our children about our mistakes, then we had no right to be their parents. We had a terrible fight, but in the end, she agreed. I stayed looking at him, this 42-year-old man who still had traces of the boy he was, his father's hazel eyes, the jawline he inherited from me. My son, broken, but trying to rebuild himself. Robert, I need you to understand something, I said, choosing each word carefully. I love you all, you, the children, even Brenda in a way, but I can't go back to being who I was. I can't go back to saying yes to everything. I can't go back to letting you treat me like a bank or a maid. I'm not asking you to. Let me finish. If we're going to rebuild this relationship, it has to be different. There has to be respect, boundaries, reciprocity. I can't be the one who always gives while you only receive. Do you understand that? Yes, completely. And I need time. I can't pretend that everything is fine just because you came to apologize. Apologies are the first step, but healing takes time, maybe months, maybe years. Whatever you need, he said firmly. Mom, I'm going to prove to you that I can change, even if it takes my whole life. He took something out of his pocket, an envelope. He placed it on the coffee table between us. What is that? It's $85,000, the money I borrowed from you 3 years ago for my partnership with John. I know you said it didn't matter, that you had forgotten about it, but I didn't forget, and it's time to pay you back. I opened the envelope. Cash, $100 bills perfectly counted. Robert, you didn't have to. Yes, I did, because part of the problem is that I assumed your money was my money, that I could take without returning, that your sacrifices didn't matter because you were my mom, and moms do that. But I was wrong. Your money is yours, your time is yours, your life is yours, and I have no right to any of it unless you choose to give it to me. I looked at the money, then I looked at him, and for the first time in a long time, I saw my son for real. Not the man who had disappointed me, but the man who was trying to be better. Thank you, I said, closing the envelope. This means a lot. There's something else, he continued. Brenda wants to come see you, to apologize personally, but only if you're ready. I won't pressure you. Whenever you say so, if you ever want to see her. I'm not ready, I answered honestly. Maybe in a while, but not now. Understood. I'll tell her. He stood up to leave. At the door, he turned around. Mom, one last thing. Could the kids see you? It doesn't have to be here. It could be in a park or wherever you want, just half an hour. They miss you so much. I thought about Jacob and Chloe, their confused little faces at the airport. Jacob's message, how the children always end up caught in the middle of the adults' mistakes. This Saturday, I said, at Central Park, at 11 o'clock in the morning. You can bring them, but you stay at a distance. I want to talk to them alone. Perfect. We'll be there. Thank you, Mom. I watched him leave through the window. He walked toward his car with his shoulders a little straighter than when he arrived. Maybe there was hope, maybe not. Time would tell. That night, before sleeping, I looked at the photograph of Richard on my nightstand. I think I did the right thing, my love, I told the silence. I set boundaries. I defended my dignity, but I didn't close the door. There's still hope for this family to heal. What do you think? Richard didn't answer, of course, but in my heart, I felt something that I interpreted as his approval. He had always wanted me to be strong, to stand up for myself, and finally, at 70 years old, I was doing it. I fell asleep that night with the envelope of money in my nightstand drawer, with the memories of San Francisco fresh in my mind, and with the hope that on Saturday, when I saw my grandchildren, I could begin to build something new. Something based on love, yes, but also on respect, on boundaries, on dignity, because that is what every relationship needs to survive. The meeting with the twins is about to happen, and what happened that Saturday in the park was the moment where everything truly began to heal. Stay tuned for the conclusion of this story. I promise it will be worth it. Saturday dawned with a clear sky, that deep blue that is only seen in New York City after it has rained all night. I got up early, as always, and prepared myself carefully. I didn't want to look too dressed up or neglected, just myself. I put on comfortable denim pants, a lavender shirt that Mandy had helped me choose in San Francisco, and my white sneakers. I pulled my hair back into a low ponytail and put on a little pale pink lipstick. Looking in the mirror, I saw a different woman than the one I had been 2 weeks ago. There was something in my eyes. Determination, peace, strength. I arrived at Central Park at 10:30. I bought cotton candy from a street vendor and sat on a bench under a cherry blossom tree that was dropping purple flowers onto the grass. I watched families pass by, parents pushing strollers, children running after dogs, couples holding hands. Life went on, indifferent to everyone's small personal dramas. At 11 o'clock sharp, I saw them arrive. Robert was walking with Jacob and Chloe, one on each hand. The children were wearing casual clothes, Jacob in a Batman t-shirt and shorts, Chloe in a yellow dress with sunflowers and her light-up sneakers. When they saw me, Chloe let go of her father's hand and ran toward me. "Grandma Eleanor!" I received her in my arms, feeling her little body cling to me desperately. She smelled of strawberry shampoo and that particular scent children have. Jacob arrived afterward, more shy, but when I hugged him, he also melted against me. "I missed you so much," I told them, and it was true. "Us too, Grandma," Jacob said, his voice muffled against my shoulder. Robert stayed about 30 feet away, near the fountain, giving us space as we had agreed. He waved to me, and I nodded. "Come, sit with me," I told the children, pointing to the bench. They sat down on either side, Chloe clinging to my arm as if she feared I would disappear again. "I know you've had some tough days," I began, "and I know you have questions. You can ask me anything you want." There was silence. Then Jacob, always the more direct one, asked, "Grandma, do you not love us anymore?" My heart squeezed. "I love you with all of my heart, Jacob. That is never going to change. Never. What happened had nothing to do with you." "But you canceled the trip," Chloe said in a small voice. "We were going to the beach. I wanted to build sandcastles with you." "I know, my love, and I am truly sorry. I know you were excited, but sometimes adults do things that hurt other adults, and when that happens, there are consequences." "Mom yelled at you," Jacob said, and it wasn't a question, but an affirmation. "At the airport. I heard her say mean things." So they had understood more than Robert and Brenda thought. Yes, your mom said things to me that hurt very much, and I decided that I couldn't go on a trip where I didn't feel respected, not even for you, whom I love so much. Why did you have to love yourself first? Chloe asked. I looked at her, surprised. Who told you that? Dad. He said that sometimes loving yourself means disappointing other people, and that's okay. I looked toward where Robert was standing. He was watching us from afar, hands in his pockets. Our eyes met, and he nodded slightly. Maybe he really was changing. Your dad is right, I said, and it's a very important lesson. Sometimes we think that loving means enduring everything, putting up with everything, giving everything. But true love also includes respecting yourself. Mom cried a lot that week, Jacob said, and she said that she was sorry too, that she had made a mistake. I'm glad she admits it. Are you going to forgive her? Chloe asked. Someday, perhaps, but forgiveness takes time. It doesn't happen overnight. And before forgiveness, there has to be change. Your mom and your dad have to show me that things are going to be different. Jacob played with his fingers, thoughtful. Grandma, did we do anything bad too? Is that why you didn't come to see us? I knelt in front of him, taking his little face in my hands. Listen to me closely, Jacob Nelson. You and your sister did nothing wrong. Nothing. You are children, and adults sometimes make decisions that affect you, even if it's not your fault. I didn't come to see you because I needed time for myself, to heal. But that doesn't mean I don't love you, or that you are to blame for anything. Are you all healed now? Chloe asked. I'm better, much better. And that's why I'm here today, because I missed you, and I want to be in your lives, but in a different way. Different how? Well, I'm going to see you less often than before. I'm not going to babysit every time your parents need something. I won't pay for things like before. But when we see each other, it's going to be quality time. It's going to be special, like today. I like that, Jacob said. I'd rather see you less and have you happy than see you all the time, but sad. Did you go to the beach alone? Chloe asked. I went to San Francisco with my friend Mandy, and it was wonderful. I swam in the bay. I went whale watching. I ate delicious seafood. I saw incredible sunsets. Whale watching? Jacob's eyes lit up. Did you see any fish? Lots, of all colors. There was a huge yellow one that looked like a cartoon. I want to go whale watching. Someday you will, and when you're older, if you want, we can take a trip together. Just you, Chloe, and me. Would you like that? They both got excited. We spent 2 hours in the park. I bought them ice cream. I pushed them on the swings. We played tag until my knees hurt. And the three of us ended up laughing on the grass, watching the clouds pass. They were 2 perfect hours where we were just a grandmother and her grandchildren, without the weight of everything else. When it was time to leave, I hugged them tightly. I love you both very much. Never forget that. When will we see you again? Chloe asked. In 2 weeks, on Saturday. Right here. Deal? Deal, they said in unison. Robert approached. The children ran to him, excitedly telling him about the ice cream and the swings. Thank you, he told me, for giving them this, for giving us another chance. It's a process, Robert, not an instant fix. I know, but it's a start. I watched them walk away, Jacob and Chloe skipping around him, full of childlike energy, and I felt peace. Not complete happiness, not everything resolved, but peace. 6 months later, I was sitting on the balcony of a hotel in Paris with a glass of red wine in my hand and Mandy beside me reading a magazine. I had kept my promise. After San Francisco came Seattle, where Mr. Howard showed us the city and introduced me to his daughters. Then Chicago, where we ate deep dish pizza and visited Millennium Park, and now Europe. France first, then Italy, Spain. My bank account was no longer as full as before, but it was full of something better. Experiences, memories, a life lived on my own terms. Robert and I had slowly rebuilt our relationship. We saw each other once a month for lunch, just him and me. We talked about deep things, his childhood, his fears, his mistakes. He had become transparent with me in a way he never was before. Brenda and I had seen each other 3 times. Difficult conversations where she, for the first time, had been honest about her insecurities, about how she had seen me as a threat instead of an ally. We weren't friends. Maybe we never would be, but we had reached an understanding, mutual respect, and clear boundaries. I saw the twins every 2 weeks, sometimes at the park, sometimes at my house where we baked cookies, sometimes at the movies. Quality time without the obligations of before. And I had discovered who Eleanor Nelson was beyond mother, beyond grandmother, beyond provider. I was a woman who loved to travel, who enjoyed solitude as much as company, who could set boundaries without feeling guilty, who deserved respect and demanded it, who at 70 years old still had dreams to fulfill. My phone vibrated, a message from Robert. "Mom, Jacob got a 100% in math. He says he wants to tell you about it on Saturday. Sending you a hug. Me too. Love you." I smiled. I replied, "I'm so proud. Tell him congratulations. See you Saturday. Love you too." I put the phone away and looked at the sunset over Paris. The sky was orange and pink. The city lights were beginning to turn on. Life was bustling in the streets below. "What are you thinking about?" Mandy asked. "About that morning at the airport," I replied, "when Brenda yelled at me and I felt like the world was ending. I thought I was losing my family, but in reality, I was finding myself." "That was the best yelling you ever got," Mandy laughed. "You're right, because it forced me to do something I should have done years ago. Value myself, respect myself, love myself enough not to allow myself to be treated like trash." I raised my glass of wine. To the screams that wake us up, to the difficult decisions, to the trips we take alone, to the women we once were and the women we became. Mandy raised her glass. To Eleanor Nelson, the woman who supposedly didn't know how to travel and turned out to be the best traveler of all. We clinked glasses as the sun set over Paris, and I thought of all the women who at this moment are where I was, giving too much, receiving too little, feeling invisible in their own families, enduring what shouldn't be endured out of fear of being alone. And if I could tell them one thing, it would be this: loneliness hurts less than disrespect. Being alone is better than being accompanied by people who don't value you. And it's never, ever too late to set boundaries, to stand up for yourself, to choose yourself. Because when I stood up in that airport and canceled those tickets, I wasn't being selfish. I was being brave. I was choosing my dignity over their comfort. I was saying, for the first time in a long time, I matter too. And that decision, that moment of bravery, changed everything. I didn't lose my family. I rebuilt it on healthier terms. I didn't end up alone. I accompanied myself first, and then the others followed. I didn't become bitter. I became free. That time at the airport, the one who supposedly didn't know how to travel was the only one who flew. And I keep flying. Every day, every decision, every boundary I set, every time I choose myself, I keep flying. Because true wealth is not in what you possess, but in what you don't allow to be taken from you. And no one is ever going to take my dignity from me again. This has been my story. The story of how a scream at an airport became my awakening, of how hitting rock bottom was the push I needed to fly.